All right, let's go ahead and get started with the October version of our quarterly Water Quality Advisory Work Group meeting. My name is Greg Easley. I'm a section manager in the Water Quality Division here at TCEQ. I'll be your moderator today. I do want to remind those of you who are watching on the webcast that if you want to be added to the attendance list or roster for this meeting, to send an email to our outreach mailbox. So that's outreach@tcq.texas.gov, and we can add you to the roster. But just want to welcome you all today. Thanks for coming out to the meeting, and we'll get started with our agenda here in just a moment. But first, I wanted to go through some introductions. First of all, those of us here at the table, and then we'll pass the mic around to those of you out there to introduce yourselves and just give us your name and affiliation for everyone's benefit. So again, I'm Greg Easley. We'll go around the table this way and then go out to y'all.
Hello, I'm Laurie Fleet with the Water Quality Division.
Brian Saran, I'm the Biosolids Work Leader of the Water Quality Division.
My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm an industrial wastewater permit writer with the Water Quality Division.
Hi, Rebecca Villalba, Stormwater Team Leader.
Lelo Giacomo with the Stormwater team.
Alyssa Cook with TCEQ Stormwater Team. We're both permit writers with Rebecca.
Nathan Vassar with Lloyd Gosselink.
Tony Spears, Quadvest Water and Sewer.
Ann Ruthstrom, TCEQ Program Support and Environmental Assistance Division.
Andrew Liebau, Threes and Nichols.
Christopher Sadis with Sadis and Seals.
Julie White, City of Austin.
Summer Johnson, CPS Energy.
Gloria Broussard, Corgs Utilities, Texas.
Tammy West, Austin Water, City of Austin.
Janet Sims, Perkins Engineering.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. We'll go ahead and jump into the schedule we have here. First, we're going to have some general permit updates, and Rebecca Villalba is going to handle those.
Green light. Good afternoon. So the first permit I'm going to give you an update on is the small, or otherwise known the Phase 2 MS4 general permit. That's TXR 040,000 that regulates the municipalities. So this permit expired December 13th of last year. It was renewed 6 weeks later in January of 2019. And we had 6 months for entities to renew their permit authorization. The renewal deadline was July 23rd. And so they needed to submit their application by that day if they wanted to renew their authorization. If they didn't submit the authorization by the due date, then when they submit it afterwards, they will get a new authorization number. We currently have about 493 NOIs, or notices of intent. Those are applications that were received, and 29 waivers. This does not add up to our universe currently that we have is 574. So there, if you do the math, there are some entities that didn't submit either a waiver or their application notice of intent. And of course, right now, we are working to gather those numbers, and once we identify who didn't submit their application, of course we have to send it to our Office of Enforcement and Compliance for them to proceed as appropriate. We will also send that list to our small business local government assistants, who will reach out to those MS4s to see if there's anything that they can do to help them if they need assistance. So anyway, that's the universe. Right now, we did hire 6 contractors to help us with the review of these applications. The contractor started with the applications review and processing team. We call them the ARP team, and they helped review the applications to declare them administratively complete. Most of the applications now are administratively complete. I think we only have maybe 50 or so that are still pending, getting administratively reviewed. And so the applications, they move to the Water Quality Standards team, where they are reviewing to make sure that the information regarding the discharge route, are they discharged into an impaired water body, to a TMDL watershed. Then once that those applications are complete with the water quality standards, then they're moving to my team, the stormwater team, where we're going to conduct the technical review. As of today, we received about 60 applications that we are now doing a technical review. We've trained our new team members that you just met right there, the first two newest members of the team, and our 6 contractors. And so they are now reviewing those applications for technical completeness. We're reaching out to those entities with a notice of deficiency where we are deficient in items that we need addressed. So we do please ask for your cooperation to respond as soon as possible by the deadline that we give you. If you need more time, if it's reasonable, we'll grant it, but please, we want to work with you as quickly as possible to proceed to get the application technically complete so that then we can send it to the chief clerk's office for you to publish the notice in the newspaper for the 30-day comment period. The other thing regarding this is that we've had questions regarding the annual reports. So for those existing MS4s, the annual report deadline has not changed. If you do have some questions because you're changing your reporting period to be a fiscal year to a calendar year or some other kind of reporting period, please send us an email on a case-by-case basis. We are working with entities to make sure you understand how that affects your reporting period. But for now, just continue reporting as normal. Any questions regarding the MS4 general permit? Okay. So our goal is to, as much as possible, declare all these applications that we have technically complete by the end of January. So that's our goal. Of course, that's why, if MS4s can respond as sufficiently as possible and then publish the notice in the newspaper, that it would be great. That would help us. But the goal is to get them administratively complete by the end of January, so that then we will be focusing on the process of the public notice. Okay, if there's no more questions, anything on the webcast online, people? No? Okay. So then move on to the multi-sector general permit. That's TXR 050,000. This is a permit that regulates the industrial facilities that discharge stormwater based on their SIC code or industrial activity code. So this permit expires on August 14 of 2021. As you know, our permit process to renew a permit is a little lengthy, so we start pretty much 2 years in advance because we start off with a stakeholder meeting. So this permit, we already started the stakeholder meeting process. We're having the stakeholder meeting this Friday here at 10 o'clock in the morning in this agenda room. We already reached out internally to all the program areas and asked for their input, their feedback on anything that we need to revise, to change, to improve on the permit, to make things clearer. Sometimes we try to make it clearer and it turns out to be more confusing. So we're very careful in trying to make sure that it is making something more clear. So internally, we've received that feedback. We've addressed those comments, and so we have a list of proposed changes that we're going to present at the meeting on Friday. Those list of proposed changes and the presentation will be posted on our website probably the end of tomorrow, first thing Thursday morning. Currently, the agenda is already posted. Right now, we've sent out an email to various sources to reach out to the universe, as well as to stakeholders that are interested in this general permit. Comments will be due by November 1st. So we have 2 weeks from October 18th for entities to submit comments to us for us to consider them. The next step would be for us to revise the permit based on comments that we received both internally and externally. And then we will proceed to brief management to get permission to send the permit to EPA. Then EPA will have their 90 days to review the permit, give us comments. Last time, we were very lucky to where EPA approved the permit without any comments. So that was like, surprising to us. We'll see if that happens this time. Right now, we do know what we want to do, hopefully internally, as well as based on what comments we received from the stakeholders. But we do have an unknown regarding this permit. I'm not sure if all of you have heard, but EPA was challenged. Pretty much, they were sued regarding the industrial permit, the national industrial permit regarding the benchmark values and a couple of other items. So they had to pursue doing a study. They hired the National Academies of Science to do a study, and that study was completed earlier this year, and they have recommendations to EPA. EPA is required to address those recommendations from that study based on the challenge, that they are under, the order that they are under. We do not know how EPA is going to address those recommendations in their permit. They're not going to address them in the rule. In Texas, as you know, if it's not in the rule, then we don't need to implement it. However, if something makes sense and it's reasonable, we might take that. So we don't know what we might do regarding the results of that. But unfortunately, it looks like we might be one of the first permits that EPA is going to review after that study. And EPA's permit expires May of next year. They've told us that next month in November, they should have a draft permit available for us to review. So based on that, we will get an idea of where EPA is going, and we'll see what they do and see if we can do something similar if we agree with it. So definitely we will let stakeholders know if we have any additional changes that we don't tell you about on Friday. So just stay tuned regarding that. Any questions on the MSGP? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Next, we've got several rule updates we want to present to you, and we'll start with Brian.
Good afternoon. To give you an update, the office is initiating rule changes at Chapter 312 for sludge use and disposal to provide for clarification and intent of our rule requirements. We propose administrative and technical updates to the Commission on this past agenda on October 9th. The Commissioners gave us approval to move on with publishing the proposed rules and to have a public hearing. They didn't have any questions for us, which is always a good thing. The proposed rules will be published in the Texas Register on October 25th, and that'll begin the comment period, and it'll end on November 26th. So again, that's October 25th to November 26th is the comment period. We'll have a public hearing in this room on Tuesday, November 19th at 10 a.m. Individuals may present oral statements when called in order of registration. If you'd like to submit comments but can't make it to the public hearing, you could submit them on the Texas Register during the comment period. Just make sure to reference the rule project number, which is 2017-035-312-OW. This information, along with the preamble and the proposed rule changes, can be found on the TCEQ website by first going to Rule Proposals and Adoptions, then clicking on Rule Proposals, and the proposed rule will have the usual Texas Register format where you would see what is being added will be underlined and what we're removing is bracketed. I will continue to give you updates. I think we're going to have the next meeting will be in January, so I don't think I'm going to have any updates before then. It'll be right after then. I think we'll go in February to propose for adoption if everything goes as planned. Do you have any questions? None over there? All right, thanks.
All right. My name is Sarah Johnson, and I'm going to give an update on a new rulemaking that we're initiating for Chapter 319. The EPA's 2017 method update rule for the Clean Water Act pertains to testing methods, how to calculate method detection limits, the EPA's determined minimum levels for pollutants, but it also includes a clarification regarding the alternate test procedure, or ATP process. Revised 40 CFR 136.5 clarifies that while requests for a limited use ATP may be sent to the state agency responsible for issuing NPDES permits, actual approval for those limited use ATPs can only be granted by the EPA and their regional ATP coordinator, not by the states. And so the recent update clarifies again who the approval authority is. So the TCEQ is going to have to update our rules on the ATP process to align with the EPA's clarification. We also noted some minor changes that need to be made to Chapter 319 in the latest rules review. Clarifications include removal of obsolete sections and improving readability. Therefore, the Office of Water is initiating rulemaking to revise the alternate test procedure requirements in Chapter 319, again to better align with the revised 40 CFR Part 136, and to also just improve overall readability of the chapter. So rulemaking is still very early. It's in the concept phase. The current timeline targets a proposal date of June 5th, 2020, and an adoption date of October 21st, 2020. Are there any questions on the Chapter 319 rulemaking?
So I'm going to give an update on the City of Austin rule petition. Oh, wait. Before I do, Rebecca has something to add.
So continuing on with the method rule update, or MER, we want to give you an update of what happened since the last time we gave you an update. So we had a stakeholder meeting with the method update rule stakeholders, those entities that have said they wanted to be informed of what's going on regarding this rule. So the meeting was on August 20th of this year. We had 23 entities or people that attended, representing laboratories, municipalities, consultants, and state governments. So it was a really good stakeholder meeting. We had some good input, feedback. We presented to the stakeholders a standalone document. One of our proposals is to remove Appendix E from the implementation procedures document and make it a standalone document. That way, when we need to revise it and update it, the process we'll hope is a little bit faster than having it attached to the implementation procedures document, which has a more formal process. Stakeholders seemed to be okay with us separating that Appendix E. However, their concerns were that to make sure that they were involved in any revisions, they want stakeholder input involvement. So we are aware of that. Thank you for that input. Also, as Sarah said, another item is we need to do rulemaking. So 319 rulemaking is going on, as well as we've informed the appropriate group that 30 TAC Chapter 307 also needs to be revised. So that's something that's a separate group that's doing that rulemaking. So those are items related to the effects and changes required because of the method update rule, the 2017 method update rule. Also, we discussed with stakeholders, there's 4 new pollutants with water quality standards and potentially what methods are available to analyze for them, for those 4 pollutants, as well as to hear if they knew about sources where these pollutants were coming from and other alternative options that could be available, such as stakeholders mentioned that maybe not requiring to analyze for them, but maybe allowing the opportunity to show that, if they're not present or reasonably expected to be present, maybe waiving the sampling for those pollutants. So those are comments that came from the stakeholders. Also, we discussed briefly our proposed path regarding the implementation of the new methods and minimum analytical levels in applications and draft permits. So those are the items that we discussed. We are currently working on finalizing a web page. We decided, based on the fact that EPA updates 40 CFR Part 136 methods frequently, like currently they already have a 2019 proposed MUR available. We thought it was best to dedicate a web page to MUR. So that's a web page that right now is waiting final approval. So hopefully within the next week, we will have a web page that we can send out to you where we're going to have the presentation posted that we provided to the stakeholders, as well as the handouts that were provided and the minutes from that stakeholder meeting. So the next step is, like Sarah said, we're doing some rulemaking. We are also briefing management on our proposed documents. We need decisions made from management to figure out how we need to move forward in certain items. And so we're starting that process to brief our deputy director on our proposed changes to get agreement. And of course, right now, one of the items that is important for us in this implementation process is the implementation procedures document, how that is handled to remove Appendix E from that. But basically, that's the update that we wanted to provide to you right now. Any questions on the method update rule? Okay, thank you.
And just one thing that I can add on, sorry, Lori. We, as Rebecca said, we are updating management, and part of that update is that we do have a first draft of what that standalone document would look like with the updated MALs. And once we get sign off from management, we hope to distribute that to stakeholders for their input in early November. So it'll be on the website, and it will be emailed out to everyone on the work group mailing lists. So keep an eye out for that. Sometime early November, we will be distributing what that standalone document would look like, and we would love everyone's input on that. Thank you.
I think it's my turn now. No. Okay, so I'm going to give an update on the City of Austin rule petition, which relates to beneficial reuse credits in chapters 309 and chapter 222. So back in 2016, we received a petition from the City of Austin requesting that we give the applicant credit in their Texas land application permit for any wastewater that they reuse, and that credit would be applied to reducing the acreage as well as reducing the pond size. We initiated rulemaking to revise chapters 309 and 222. The rulemaking did not propose to reduce the storage pond size, but it does allow the applicant to reduce the land application acreage based on the beneficial reuse credit. The proposal was published in the Texas Register on June 28th, and the comment period ended on July 30th. We are currently wrapping up our response to the public comments that we received, and it is scheduled for commission adoption on December 18th, which means that the backup material, including the response to those comments, will be available like the last week of November. Are there any questions on the beneficial reuse credit rulemaking? Then I think I will just continue on. Once I got started, you can't stop me now. So the next one is program updates, compliance monitoring. We've mentioned this in the past. This one and the next topic are kind of going to be standing topics until we make some progress. Compliance monitoring, this is specifically related to narrative conditions. The Federal Electronic Reporting Rule requires that we enter narrative conditions into EPA's federal database. We started entering some of those narrative conditions earlier this summer, and the narrative conditions are permit provisions that require the applicant to submit a report to the agency in some format. These include the renewal application, because your permit will say that you have to submit your application 180 days before it expires, not the day before, which we get those. There's also requirements for retest analysis. So if the permit requires that you retest your effluent and submit the results to us within 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, that would be entered. Quarterly progress reports are also examples. Any annual reports that are required, thermal plume studies, source identification and reduction studies, and work plans, in-stream monitoring plans. All of those are plans or reports that are required to be submitted by a specific date. Again, those requirements are going to be entered in EPA's database, and those due dates are put in there. And so EPA's database, if we don't receive that report and update EPA's database, it will flag it as a non-receipt, very similar to DMR non-receipts. And so TCEQ as well as EPA will be able to run reports to identify late or non-submittals. Are there any questions about the narrative conditions and how those are going to be tracked? Okay. And then improving permit processing timeframes. This is a topic that's been on this advisory work group this entire calendar year. I think the first time we brought it up was back in January. Our legislative performance measure is to process 85% of our permits within established timeframes. This past year, we were only able to process 81% of our permits on time. We did not meet our LBB performance measure, and that's huge. I mean, that impacts our funding. It could impact our FTEs, and not in a good way. So we've made, over this past year, we started seeing kind of the writing on the wall. We started reviewing our internal processes, looking to see if we could streamline things in any way. We made a number of changes to our process, but one of the things that we continue to need your help with is timely publishing public notices. There is a specific time frame that you're supposed to be publishing these notices and getting the documentation to us. For the NORI, which is the first notice, it's a little bit different time frame than the NAPTI. The NAPTI is 60 days. They're supposed to publish in 30 days and get the documents to us within 30 days after publishing. So total time frame should be 60 days. Right now, we currently have 61 permits that are being delayed because the NORI either hasn't been published or the documentation hasn't been submitted. So that's 61. That also includes NORIs and NAPTIs. I'm sorry, that's NORI and NAPTI that either haven't been published or the notice verification documents haven't been submitted or they were incorrect. So I'm going to encourage y'all all to publish your notices as soon as you get them. This issue has been elevated to our executive management, and in the rule 39.405A, it says that if the notices are not published in a timely manner, that the commission can return your application. So for renewal applications, that's going to be a huge impact, because if your renewal application gets returned, you will have to submit a new application, and you'll be invited during that time frame that we're processing that new application. You're basically going to be operating without a permit, having unauthorized discharges. Additionally, as a new permittee or new permit applicant, you would be subject to contested case hearings, whereas renewal applications typically are not. So the implications of failing to publish your notice and getting your permit returned is huge. I would, again, encourage everyone, publish that notice when you get it. Don't put it on the truck dash. Don't stick it under your desk drawer. Run to the newspaper. Get that taken care of. Are there any questions about the notice? One of the other things I'll mention is draft acceptance delays. We've been getting more and more applicants commenting on things like our boilerplate language. That boilerplate language is supported by regs, so it's not something that we can change, but that just simply delays our process. Right now we have 31 permits that are waiting on applicant review greater than our 7-day turnaround time, and some of those have been pending for months. So I would encourage y'all to review your draft permit. Let us know if there's errors, if you have comments, but the boilerplate language is typically things that are set in regs that we're not able to change. So, any questions on that topic? Question? Okay.
I have a question about a recent NAPD that we received. It was actually a correction to the owner facility name.
Okay.
And it wasn't us.
Okay.
But our core data form says our name. So I'm kind of curious. I've spoke to 3 different people at TCEQ, and I'm really nervous that we're not going to meet our timeline because that has to be corrected. How is that going to handle? Are we held to that timeline, even when we said that you've got our name completely wrong, but it was correct in the draft?
In that situation, we would not be returning your application because that's something we're going to work with you on to get that notice correct. I will say when you review your draft permit, when it's sent out, the notice is sent out with that. So I would encourage everyone to read that notice very carefully to make sure it's correct, because a lot of times applicants will publish the notice and it's only after they publish that they realize there's incorrect information and it requires them to republish. But no, we would work with you to make sure that that notice is correct, and that's not something that we're wanting to return applications for. We're really trying to target those folks who we sent it out in May and it still hasn't been published. We've received no documentation, like it's crickets chirping. That's the ones we're like, what's going on? And we had a question on the webcast.
Yes, we had a question come in from one of our webcast viewers on the compliance monitoring. Question comes from Denise Ehrlich with the Gulf Coast Authority. Denise asks, will the flagged data be the date submitted or the date received?
It would be the date received. So when we receive a report, we're going to put in the receive date, and that's the date that EPA database requires. It's not the postmark date, it's not when you submitted it, it's the receipt date. So I would encourage you to get those in the mail in plenty of time.
Thank you.
Any other questions on these topics? All right, and I think my last topic on the agenda is House Bill 2771. This bill was passed this last legislative session. It requires TCEQ to seek delegation authority from EPA for MPDS program to issue permits for discharges of produced water, hydrostatic test water, and gas plant effluent, which is discharged into water in the state from certain oil and gas activities. So we have to seek authority from EPA, which right now we don't have authority to issue those permits. We're required to submit that application by September 1 of 2021. And then EPA would review our application and hopefully, fingers crossed, approve our delegation. And upon transfer of EPA delegation to us, the bill transfers state permitting authority from the Railroad Commission to TCEQ for those discharges. We held a stakeholder meeting in this room on September 17th to discuss the activities and the timeline that has to go into implementing this particular bill. Those meeting minutes, it was webcast, it's all available. If you go to the homepage and you type in the search engine, HB 2771, it'll take you to a web page that has our meeting minutes, the webcast, etc. A second meeting is scheduled for December 5th, in which we'll be providing stakeholders with an update on the status of all of those activities and timelines. I believe the meeting details were shared with anybody who's on the Water Quality Advisory Work Group meeting for this meeting. You probably got notice of you got notice of that meeting. Typically, we are going to be continuing to send out those meeting notes for that stakeholder group through our Water Quality Advisory Work Group meeting. So if you're already on our Water Quality Advisory Work Group meeting email distribution, you will be getting meeting notes, invitations, etc. related to House Bill 2771. Any questions on that topic? So before I turn it back over to Greg, I have a couple I penciled in. I wanted to share with y'all that we are, I just got approval recently to develop a water treatment plant general permit. So right now we have approximately 108 conventional water treatment facilities that are authorized under individual permits. We would like to, and I now have authorization from management to proceed with a draft general permit. So that goes back to that permit processing timeframes. If we can convert some of our individual permittees to general permits, that is a much more reduced permit process. It's not, our general permit authorizations don't impact our LBB performance measures. So from our perspective, it would be a huge workload reduction converting those over to a general permit. So we've got a draft. We had to get that kind of at least kicked off before we could go to management for approval. So I anticipate that between now and the next Water Quality Advisory Work Group meeting, that we'll be sharing a draft with stakeholders. Just to give you a little heads up on how we got where we are. The draft, I essentially took a general permit shell. So a general permit has specific requirements on how you apply for the permit, how to make changes, how to terminate your coverage, our standard permit conditions. But then in the middle of the permit document is all of the general requirements. That's going to be the specific requirements for that permit. It's going to talk about what type of discharges are authorized, what the limitations are, and all the permit requirements that have to be complied with, like effluent limits, as well as narrative conditions. So we started off with just a general permit shell, and then we have a shell document for our conventional water treatment plant individual permits. So we took that document and pared it down to make it specific to water treatment. So in our boilerplate language, there's things about, POTWs. Well, obviously this is not a POTW. So we did take our shell and boiled it down to just the things that apply to a water treatment plant. So that's going to be, whenever we get around to sharing that with y'all, because I just recently got approval to start working with stakeholders, it's going to take a little time to kind of get that ball rolling and get that out to y'all. But I do hope to get that started and out to y'all for comment. At this point, I don't anticipate having a stakeholder meeting, but rather through our Water Quality Advisory Work Group, perhaps just send the draft out, give stakeholders maybe 30 days to provide input, and then we kind of go from there. And based on that input, if I see that we need to have maybe a stakeholder meeting to talk through some of those, then we can have a meeting. But if we can do it through the email distribution, I think that would be preferable to keep the process rolling. So any questions? That's kind of hot off the press. I even had to pencil it in. Any questions on that topic? All right, well, stay tuned for that. Again, that'll be coming out through the Water Quality Advisory Work Group email distribution list. And then last, this one should have been on the meeting agenda, but somehow slipped my mind. The hydrostatic test general permit, we submitted that it's going through renewal right now, and it expires in April of 2020. I'm doing all this off the top of my head. So we went to EPA, and then we recently, I'd say in the last 2 weeks, we got EPA approval. No comments were made. So we are now going to be moving forward with publishing that renewal. I believe we're going to be publishing on October 25th. It'll publish in newspapers as well as the Texas Register. That general permit is kind of tied in with the House Bill 2771 slightly. So hydrostatic test discharges from oil and gas facilities is one of those groups of discharges that was transferred, or we're required to seek delegation for under that House Bill 2771. There is some folks who have asked me, hey, are you going to be revising the hydrostatic test general permit this go round to include the oil and gas discharges? And the answer is no. That renewal has already gone through EPA review, which is a 90-day review. Were I to pull that back and make additional revisions at this point and then give EPA another 90 days, chances are that permit would expire. And so if it expired, we could have no new discharges under that permit until it got renewed. So I don't want to impact this renewal by backing it up and kind of revising it at this point. So this permit is actually going to go on through our renewal process. As soon as it gets readopted, we can then start on an amendment to add the oil and gas. So just want y'all to know that whenever you see the draft permit and the notice that goes out in October 25th, and you see that it doesn't include the oil and gas, that's the reason why. So there, again, it's going to publish on October 25th, and there is a public meeting that's going to be held in this room on December 3rd. And the purpose of having that public meeting is essentially to make sure folks are aware of the fact that it's not going to contain the oil and gas discharges at this time. But we wanted to go ahead and have that meeting so as not to further delay our permit renewal process. Any questions on the hydrostatic test, GP? Then I think I will hand it back off to you, Greg.
All right, thank you, Lori. Well, that's our agenda for today. Before we kind of close things out, I'll have a couple announcements, but anyone have any questions on things we haven't discussed today? I don't want to tease out any questions, but certainly open to anything that might be on your minds. Okay. Well, so just the two announcements I wanted to make that are on the agenda as well. So the next meeting of this advisory work group is going to be in January 21st, and probably most likely the same time, same place. So be sure to put that on your calendar. And then also, Rebecca already mentioned earlier the MSGP renewal stakeholder meeting that's going to be this Friday at 10 o'clock here in this room. And I understand that's going to be webcast, kind of like what we do for this meeting. So for those of you who can't make it in person, you'll be able to at least watch it from your computer. So, and those are my announcements. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out today. Thank all our presenters. Appreciate all the good information that they doled out. And we'll adjourn the meeting. Hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thanks for coming.